Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, and this is my campaign ad for Joe Biden. Joe Biden has decided he will not attend the DNC convention because of concerns about coronavirus. We're all looking to be safe, and Joe Biden has made the safe choice for America. Totally unlike George Washington, who made the reckless choice to hold a revolution during a smallpox pandemic. Smallpox is thousands of times deadlier than COVID-19. George Washington should have done the right thing and hid in his basement like Joe Biden did. Joe Biden was safe and warm in his Delaware home, while George Washington was out there freezing on the Delaware River. According to the CDC, smallpox has a mortality rate of 30%. George Washington himself nearly died from smallpox, and that's why his face was scarred. He made the choice to inoculate his troops via variolation. He exposed the troops to very small amounts of the smallpox virus, and this kept 99% of them safe. George Washington's actions were reckless. He should have simply hidden from the public like Joe Biden did for the past 4 months. And as Beneficent Bumblebee pointed out on Twitter, Washington also owned slaves, so I'm sure that makes him a hero to Republicans. A fascinating historical viewpoint, given that the Republican Party was founded to end Democratic Party slavery. Responsible presidents know better than to defend freedom during viral epidemics, which happen every year. Had we had adequate testing during the 1940s, we could have prevented D-Day. Our first priority as they were invading Normandy should have been to keep the troops safe at all costs. Okay, making a campaign ad for Joe Biden is ridiculous because he's a ridiculous person and he belongs to a ridiculous party. But let's talk about the real issue here. Joe Biden is very old. He probably suffers from Alzheimer's and is probably at high risk from COVID-19. This disease is a significant threat to older people. Governments needed to make a decision for how to protect the older population and keep them from filling up the hospitals. In the United States, many state governments took the approach of locking people up in their homes, which was modeled after the totalitarian Chinese government. It was well known by early March that the vast majority of people who were dying from this disease were very old and had multiple comorbidities. The lockdown approach was based on the idea that if they locked up the younger population, that could keep the older population safe. This approach was doomed to failure because sooner or later the younger population was going to get out, they were going to get exposed, and they were going to become a risk to the older population. The only thing which the lockdowns accomplished was to extend the misery, destroy the economy, and destroy the morale of the people. Sweden, on the other hand, had an actual scientist in charge, Dr. Anders Tegnell. He took the scientific approach of isolating the older population and getting the young people exposed. This way, the younger population developed immunity and became less of a threat to the older population. The Swedish efforts weren't perfect. A lot of nursing homes got exposed back in March and April, and they had a spike in deaths. But since then, deaths have been coming down, and now they're very close to 0 deaths per day. Unlike the American population, the Swedish population now feels safe. Sweden has demonstrated that it's critically important to have honest scientists in charge, not political hacks like Dr. Fauci. And because of all the misinformation in the press and the failure of Dr. Fauci to set the record straight, Americans now believe that about 9% of the U.S. population died from COVID-19. That would be about 33 million people. The dumbing down of America by the press and the school system has been quite intentional. Teachers' unions want to defund the police, wealth taxes, charter school bans, and Medicare for all before the schools can reopen. And the dumbing down of America, combined with all the propaganda, is what's made a terrible candidate like Joe Biden possible. He's 77 years old and apparently didn't even know what he believed until he spoke with Bernie Sanders last week. Thanks to all the propaganda in the press and the disinformation being taught to our school children, creepy Joe Biden is now a hero, and a real hero like George Washington is despised. There isn't much question that this is being done by people with lots of money and lots of power. There also isn't much question that this intentional dumbing down of America has been going on for decades. Toto isn't happy with the situation, and he's barking out his warning to America. He believes that a functional society depends on accurate information, like what the Swedish public has received over the past 4 months and the U.S. public has been deprived of. Toto is always setting the record straight about junk science and propaganda. You can visit him on the web at realclimatescience.com.